everyone. Good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to Source for Tomorrow's Innovation and Ethics at the Limit of Food. I thought where we could begin, just so everyone listening in can hear a little bit about your backgrounds and who you all are. Let's do just some very quick introductions, a little bit about who you are, which company you work for, what types of products you're making, and your role there. So maybe Bernat, we'll start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, cool. I'm Bernat Añaños. I'm co-founder of Eura Foods. We do plant-based meat, and we are a startup from Barcelona that we started in 2017. I am the comms guy. So at the moment, I'm currently leading a department that it's called Social Movement. And what we do is to spread the message of we have to change the current status quo on the food system right now. So that's my role today.
Great, thank you. Martin, over to you, please.
Hi, my name is Maarten Bos. I'm the CEO of Mosa Meat. Mosa Meat is a company that develops cultured meat. We're focusing on beef, and I'll tell you a bit more about the details later on.
Perfect, thank you. Andres.
I'm Andres Montefeltro. I'm CEO and co-founder of Cubic Foods. We are innovating in the alternative fat space. We are working on plant-based fat replacers to mimic animal fats in a variety of plant-based products. And also we are developing a novel cell-based omega-3 production as alternative source of sustainable omega-3.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Michael.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Michael Kleindl. I'm co-founder and managing partner of a venture capital firm based out of Zurich in Switzerland, and we do invest in a sustainable food system, which for us includes plant-based food, plant-based alternatives, and cultured food, amongst other topics.
Well, wonderful. Thanks again for all of you for joining today. I was very much looking forward to this conversation. I'm sure in another time we'd all meet in person and have some opportunities to get to know one another a little bit more, but it's great to meet you here. I'm Justin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of WildType, which is a cell-cultured seafood company that's been around since 2016. And I thought where we could start the discussion maybe as a calibrating point for those listening in who may not be quite as familiar with the technology as we all are. I was wondering, Martin, maybe as a representative of the first cultured meat company, if you could help us understand a little bit between the difference between, let's say, cultured meat and plant-based meat.
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing to mention is that they both share a similar goal, and that is to replace conventional meat with all its negative externalities. So that's good to mention. The differences are that, I guess, plant-based meat, they use different types of plants, mixes them and processes them, and then the outcome basically mimics meat, where cell-cultured products, we take animal cells and we feed the cells different small chunks of also plants, and therefore we mimic the process inside an animal's body, and we therefore enable the cells to perform their natural behavior, and that is to grow into meat tissue. So here it's more the process that is that mimics the animal, and the outcome is actual real meat. So that is I would say the difference between the two of them.
Great, thank you. And Andres, maybe your company, I think, sits at the intersection between cultured meat and plant-based foods to a large extent. And I'm curious if there are areas in which these two technologies might intersect, plant-based and cultured foods.
Yes, indeed. That animal tissue is a very complex. There is a very complex combination of different types of cells, and and components, not just muscle cells, that is fat cells and connective tissue. Then some companies that are making culture fat, as an example, is thinking to combine the culture fat with plant-based protein to create a blend product that mimic a natural one, where the culture fat will contribute with flavor and some mouthfeel. Other companies are focused in producing culture meat as a muscle or source of protein, and combined with the fat replacer, like the goat drop we are developing to mimic the animal fat. And a third line of companies is combining scaffolds and plant-based inks to as a supporter for cells in order to print tissue. Then they try to mimic the animal tissue at a micro level capacity, because they can print specifically where the fat will be or where the muscle will be, and they need plant-based scaffolds and supporters for the cells. Then there is a lot of combination between plant-based and the traditional cell culture technologies in order to mimic the real meat. Then we are working together in many ways.
Thanks, I appreciate that. So the first topic I was hoping to get into today is this topic about building consumer trust. And I'll share just a very quick story about the first time I told my mother what I was doing with my career. She said, very cool, really interested in what you're doing. I fully support you and love you. You're my son, of course. But has the FDA looked at this, right? And I think sort of implicit in her little comment was, there's this trust that goes along with, regulatory agencies and other things. But the bigger thing that I think she was asking about is, how do we, as representatives of these companies or investors of these companies that are creating meat and seafood products in such a different way, help people get comfortable with how that's made, right? And so I'd like to talk a little bit about this topic, building consumer trust, and what this entails for cultured meat producers this year in 2021. So Bernat, maybe we can start with you. I think what's been really interesting to watch, certainly over the last 5 years, is the success with which plant-based meat producers have had in introducing those products to market. And I'm wondering if there's anything that we can all learn from the plant-based meat and seafood movement with respect to building consumer trust and indeed excitement in our products.
Yeah, I really like the example you put of your mom, because you said building consumer trust, and like the meat, like traditional meat industry, build that consumer trust with lies. Let's be honest, no one knows what's behind the walls of like all the system. And I think here are two things. Yeah, plant-based culture meat, we have to be very transparent and informed and deliver information and be very clear of what's behind our process. I think we don't have anything to hide. So let's be honest and like, let's show our way. And there is another thing in parallel, that people have to know what's behind those walls. People have to know what they're eating, because we have this very romantic like idea of how the cows are like they're living happy, and this is not the reality. And I think what's happening, it's that plant-based meat as the first step. It's breaking all this barrier of it has always been like that. We've shown there is another way of getting to meat, and then there will be many other ways in the future, I'm sure, and I'm very happy. It's just plant-based. Maybe it's the more natural, like easy to understand to people. And what we have to do now is to start to talk about cell-based is not bad. It's just getting cells, and then there is this process that gets this meat, and actually it improves everything behind. So I would say information and trial, at least for us in such a meaty country as Spain, it has been like the key, like letting people try something that they would never try, because they would say, now I am a meat eater. Yeah, you are a meat eater. Eat this. You will be continuing being a meat eater, but in this case, plant-based meat eater. And I think this gets like to a point that we're getting used to get the meat experience from other sources. And this for sure will help culture meat in the near future to to enter in many houses because they will have maybe conventional traditional meat, plant-based meat, and then culture. Why not? Think we are getting used to have different products and not, if I eat traditional meat, I just eat traditional meat. This is not like this anymore, at least for 50% of the population that is reducing already this consumption.
I wanted to pick up on something that you said about transparency, because I think that's a really important theme, particularly when you're working on a technology that is not very well understood, right, by most people. And I'm interested to hear from anyone else on the call this morning if you have any thoughts on, the broader question of building consumer trust, or maybe even the perspective on transparency and, the balance that we have to strike as very tech-heavy companies, on one hand, allowing people to see how these products are made, but on the other hand, obviously protecting the commercial interests that are needed to run a successful company. I'd be interested in anybody's thoughts on that particular question.
Yeah, if I can, I can respond. I think they can go hand in hand. I think transparency is key here. I think it's not only to transform people's behavior from eating conventional meat to meat alternatives, but also you see it in the younger generations. They just want companies that they interact with to be transparent. So it's kind of a given that you have to be transparent. And I think, protecting the company's interests, that's also what you mentioned, that can go hand in hand together. I think we have no problem showing our process, showing how it's made, but, our specific know-how will be protected through whatever, or through a tweaking of the process or tweaking of the inputs. And that's something, that people don't have to see and fully understand in order to gain that trust and to consume that transparency, if that's a correct way of saying it.
I think that in the last 2 years, most of the cell-based companies or cultural meat companies has been working hard on education on people about the mimic of the cultured meat process and the beer production process, and also some dairy with fermentation. Then I think that more education is needed. Sometimes our companies are, we are biotechnologists, cell biologists, in general, high-tech people, and we are not looking for the education of people without these high-tech degrees. And maybe, Martin and the other company that are more mature in the space can do an effort to generate some material, educational material. I think that for the new generation, my kids and the young people is open to these new things. The big problem we have today is adults, people in the 50s, in the 40s, that want to keep the tradition as it is because they are aware that the food chain should change, and they don't know how to do that. But young people is open. If we generate great products, nice products like the Shas Nugget in Singapore, if the taste is good, people will pay for that, and it will be a normal thing in the near future.
Yeah, great point. And I thought maybe just picking up on that last thread, Michael, it'd be great to pull you into the conversation here. Obviously you have, from where you sit at Blue Horizon, a wonderful perspective on what's going on across the entire spectrum of plant-based and cultured foods. So in addition to, let's say, building consumer trust, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what other burning priorities we should all be thinking about as we start this new year.
Yeah, I mean, the consumer trust obviously is key. Without repeating what has been said, I just could fully agree to that. Probably the younger the generations are, the more open we are. And this is the first research which is out there, which proves that. And then there will be cultural differences. Certain countries might be more open to it than others, but it's a question of time. The other thing which for us, I think overall plant-based or cultured meat is true. We're not necessarily targeting today 100% of the consumer. We are aware of the fact that some things will take time, and it will go from 1% of the population trying, eating, repeating to 5, 10, 15 going forward. I don't know where we will be in 50 years. What's the mix of real meat, plant-based meat, and cultured meat of food? That's going to be interesting. Bet or poll we can do today and put it in the floor and dig it out in 50 years. Let's see what the future brings. Into consumer trust, obviously, it is about transparency. It is about authorities and regulation. You raised that question before. That is obviously important. Everyone is working on that. Some regions are a bit more progressive than others for different reasons, but that will play an important role, and it's something probably which in 21 will be accelerated. But in the end, whatever stamp you put on your product, FDA or EFSA or whatever we get in the end, it's building again consumer acceptance, consumer trust. Yeah? And then it comes down to one point at building a great product, showing transparently how it's done. This is, I think, is a very general trend. You look at Patagonia or others, I mean, cameras in their production facilities. That's something we will see more and more and more. And this is just a general thing. It applies to food and it applies to other products which are produced. I think we have to be a bit of patient. We can't count that 100% of the market will start eating cultured, which is not needed. I mean, the market is so big, obviously, for all of us. There is sufficient place. That's what I would add to what has been said.
Thank you. You brought up regulation, and I think it might be worth spending just a minute talking on that. So, as context for folks who are listening in, there was a fairly significant event that happened earlier this year with the first cultured meat company being granted regulatory authority approval, I should say, to sell their products, in this case in Singapore. And this was Just, or Eat Just, and they're producing chicken nuggets. So maybe, Martin, I'd love to get your view on sort of how much of a landmark this was in the sort of broader scheme of things, and also other folks' opinions on what's working well with respect to regulation in different jurisdictions. I know most of you are all in Europe, so it'd be interesting to get the European side of things. For those of you who've had conversations, in the US, it'd be great to get those point of view. But maybe we can just start a little bit with, sort of framing the importance of this first approval in Singapore.
Yeah, no, I think it is an important event because it shows actually that there is a path to a market, which is good for other companies also, because this is kind of the phase that we're in. I think it was mentioned already, and it's good that there's a proven path now. I think it will help other companies, but it will definitely help to build consumer trust, because now a cultured meat product has gone through a thorough process of approval, and it has been given that stamp of, this is safe to eat. So that's helping. But it's also going to help other regulatory approval bodies around the world to advance their processes of approving this type of product. There's a lot of these bodies that are looking at this product, but they're also looking at each other, like who's going to approve it first, is kind of how I would put it. And this is kind of, in the Netherlands we have a saying, if one sheep crosses the dike, then others will follow. I hope it's the same here, that one will lead the way for other regulatory approval agencies to start having their processes in place, and start really to to interact with the companies a bit more intense to get this to market.
Yeah, maybe Andres, it'd be great to get your perspectives if you're up for it on this, because obviously we were talking about trust building in the beginning, and the regulatory conversations can help with that. And I'd be interested to get your point of view on the partnership that can be formed between cultured meat companies like ours and regulators for that joint purpose, and what's worked well in your experiences, what could be better. It'd be great to hear your point of view on that.
Well, I think that the one important point in terms of culture meat is to define which will be the final product. I think that the nugget has the advantage that it's not a pure chicken piece of meat. It's a combination of other elements that facilitates the nutritional profile analysis, because you can complement with other ingredients what you don't have on the cells. And probably this facilitates the pathway, because for my understanding, besides all the process, the safety and all the elements that we are aware of that, and we are using cell culture media that is non-toxic, is for human consumption, is sustainable and everything. But at the end of the day, you need to have a product that you need to label with some name. And then if you want to label the same that the natural one, the first thing that we'll do, they will compare the nutritional profile of the natural one, and they say, hey, where is the vitamin B12? Where is the iron? Where and other elements? Then you need to add on top of your cell culture, because it's not easy to tune all the elements in the cell culture media, because you optimize the cell culture condition for the biomass production, for the differentiation, and to maximize the protein production, not the flavor, not the vitamin content and others that are based on the diet of the animals. Then I think that if you are thinking in accelerating the regulatory pathway, I think that this elaborated meat product will be easier than pure one. You want to create a steak and you want to have approval for the pure steak will be more difficult than a burger or a burger meat, where you can complement with flavor, aromas, or fat that provides a whole nutritional profile from the very beginning. This is my vision. In our part, in our approach, we are using cell-based production of omega-3, and in our case, the cell-based process will be seen as a process A to produce an oil. Then we are not selling fat; we are selling the oil we extract from the cells. It's more like fermentation, precision fermentation at Perfect Day and other, that is very well known in Europe, in novel food schema. Then it's easier to us to get approval than selling a full tissue or a new type of products. Then there is some, like the lawyers say, the devil is in the details. Then in the small words, in the small letters, there is a lot of detail that we need to take into account if we want to facilitate the approval. But I think that the culture meat company is aware of that, and they will work in such direction. Just draft a first pathway to follow. I think that it was wise from their side to move in with the nugget.
And Bernard, I'd be interested to get your perspective on something that Andres brought up, which is nutritional comparability, right? And so I think he's right to point out that a lot of consumers are, particularly those who are trying to eat healthier things, let's say they're moving toward chicken over red meat, for example, and they're looking for that same nutritional profile that you get in conventional chicken. How big of a factor is that to you and your team in terms of consumers asking for, I need 18 or 19% protein in my chicken strip that I'm getting from you? Or are they more concerned about the sort of whole package together and not so much the detail?
There is a lot of work to do there, but we put a lot of effort on making like very clean labels and products and great nutritionals. So what I always say, like, just look at this and like compare it. It's better. Like it has like very like high percentages on everything you care about meat, plus it has high percentages of what you care about vegetables in the same thing. So yeah, I think we have like a responsibility, not just about the whole spectrum of plant-based and cell-based, like to deliver better products, not just alternatives or substitutives, because we have to do successors. And to do a successor, it has to be healthy as well. It cannot be just more sustainable or like more ethical, but we can make it, because through technology, we can make healthier products as well. Because an animal, you cannot use it as a machine, it has a limit, but we can. It's on our hands. So yeah, I think at least for us, it has been like a great thing to have like to being able to deliver very short label products with great nutritionals, because a lot of people introduced it. Plus, there is something here happening in Spain, at least, like thousands of nutritionists are saying eat Eura if you want to reduce the consumption of meat, and they are breaking this barrier. So it's not you, because you are a company and you're sending a message to the world, but sometimes like all the companies we send messages to the world, we need people that have the trust that they can say, yeah, you can put Eura and it's actually healthier than meat, and you can eat it 4 times a week, don't worry, it's not a problem. So I think what we have to do here is this. And sorry, I would like to add something on the Singaporean nuggets, because I think we're talking a lot about regulations and regulatory bodies, but I think the most important thing here is people are eating this, and people are not like having a blue head after that. And I think it's something that's happening with the vaccination now. People are starting to get the vaccine, and they don't have like huge like effects on like blue heads or green hands and all these like fake news. And we can like move forward, and so more people want to get the vaccine. Same with culture meat will happen, because people will eat culture meat. They will say it's great, it tastes good, it's not that expensive, so why I'm not trying? And same is happening with plant-based meat, starting with Beyond, and now all these like hundreds of companies like doing plant-based meat around the world. And we are showing that nothing happens, it's good, you can cook it the same, and you can put it inside a bun and do a burger. I think like this is the most important. Regulatory bodies, for sure, it's the first check, but then it's like these thousands of people in Singapore that in the following months will be trying this and going to their families and say, yeah, it's pretty good, like you have to try it. This is like a game changer, like people trying it and like saying it loud to the world.
I think you put your finger on the theme, one of the big themes for this year, which is people just trying it, right? Before, you weren't able to purchase, the average person anyway, wasn't able to purchase their products. I know, Michael, I'm sure you've tried many companies' products in your due diligence, but you know, the vast majority of people haven't had that opportunity. And so I think there is a really great opportunity here just to normalize cultured meat just by having it on the market, being able to buy it. Yeah, Andreas, please.
Yes, I want to add something. I think that we have been talking about mimicking natural foods, and I think that we have the opportunity with plant-based and cultured meat to create better food than natural. Then I know that there is a trend or a tradition to try to mimic the natural one, but we need to create superfood. We need to create the food of the future, food that if you feed, I don't know, 200 grams by day, you have everything in there. You don't need to take additional pills. At the same time, you are taking food, people is taking a lot of pills every day in vitamins, functional things. And why we cannot use the next wave of food production to incorporate this in our diet and avoid this pill syndrome that everybody's taking? Even for the child and the kids, they need to access nutritional food, healthy food. Don't need to be the same as the animal one. It needs to be better. The texture, the bite should be okay. The flavor should be okay, but it needs to be nutritional and healthy. And this is my vision. Then we need to shape the industry of the food, thinking for the future, not to try to do the same or the last cow we saw when we were a child. Because my kids understand that meat is coming from the farm, but in the future, kids will thinking that food is coming from the supermarket, not from the farm, or maybe for some production area of the city. Just a vision.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it got me thinking about you know, maybe one day Martin's Burgers at Moshe Meats we'll have less saturated fat and more unsaturated, say, healthy omega-3s if we can get that to taste the same.
Sure.
You know, it's
Yeah.
an interesting point. Go ahead.
It's definitely an interesting point and an interesting vision, but I think we need to be aware of consumer acceptance. If we introduce hamburgers that can be perceived as, you know, tailored and, you know, in an unnatural way, that might be difficult for consumer acceptance. Our vision is to replace meat with meat initially, so the consumer acceptance is just has the lowest hurdle, I would say. So that means, you know, the exact nutritional profile as people are used to getting when they consume conventionally grown meat. But as that would be the starting point. After that, I agree with Andres. We have an opportunity to make it better, and almost, you know, if the opportunity is there, and it's almost like a responsibility. But it is about that balancing act between using the technology and getting consumers to accept the products that you present them with. That's the tricky part here, I would add.
Yeah, exactly right. And yeah, I'd love to get into ethics for a minute. And I think one aspect, as we've been talking about, is potentially in this second wave or second generation of cultured meat and seafood products, we might be able to see products offering some health benefits, let's say, over conventional animals, right? And in the case of what we're making, one of those benefits would be no contamination in our seafood, right? So mercury, microplastics, antibiotics, all of those things go away. I don't think anybody really wants that in their seafood, right? Indeed, that could be part of generation one. But I think generally, sort of taking a step back and thinking about the reason that this industry exists, right? I think there's a lot of conversations about sustainability, right? So could we make a form of meat production, and this is, I think, particularly important for beef, right? That is one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. Can we make a cleaner form of beef that doesn't have the environmental footprint of how many billions of cows belching every day, yet tastes as good, right? And has the same nutritional elements as you were mentioning, Martin. So I think that's one important aspect of the ethical argument for cultured meat. Michael, I'd love to get your perspectives maybe on other elements of ethics, because I think the jury's still out on whether this form of meat production will be cleaner when you add up all the greenhouse gas emissions. I think it's important to think about some of these other potential benefits that it can offer.
Yeah, I mean, greenhouse gas is important. I mean, so far as what we have seen, and there's no yet full finalized research, but it shows that cultured meat, seafood production is more sustainable than traditional. So I think we're, at least there's a trend which shows we're going into the right direction. I mean, the jury is out in the future once we have full scale production, etc. So, I mean, climate is one, but when we talk ethics, I mean, for many people, how all that plant-based movement started, and there is obviously animal welfare. And I think that we should not forget about the ethics around that, and how indefinitely or infinitely the cultured food production is more ethical than what we are seeing in industrial animal farming. I mean, we don't need to go back to Netflix and see all the movies which are out there, what other documentaries. So that's a big element which I think we should add to ethics. And then on a personal level, or talking about human beings, I mean, the fact that lots of reductions in sickness reducing, cancer risk and diabetes and cardiovascular risk. I mean, that obviously plays a topic into the field as well, which relates to ethics. I mean, if I have animal food and I get sick, or I don't have animal food and I have a chance to be healthier. So that's another element we don't talk too often about it, but it's a proven fact. Yeah, there is sufficient research out there since decades. It's not new; it's decades old. That certain diets are simply more healthier to human beings than eating animal protein all day long.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I have another topic that it's true, like health, we are not talking about this a lot, but there is something that we are not talking, that apart from being greener and like being healthier for the humans that we already have food on our tables, it can bring social justice, like food justice. So delivering food to everyone. Like we know that the current system, and they had many years to improve this system, and it's not happening yet, is not delivering proteins to everyone. Like there are millions and millions of people in this world that don't have proteins, and we have 10 more times livestock animals than humans. And if with these animals we cannot feed everyone, this system is failed. Like it's not working. For sure, it's broken for every part. So I think like culture meat, plant-based meat, they show that we can feed everyone with the resources we have without destroying the planet. And obviously, like leaving the animals out of the equation of production, that this is so like 20th century. Like we have to start to use like the values and the technology of the 21st century to feed this population that is continuously growing. Like we will be like almost 10 billion people in 2050. How are we going to feed these people if we are not feeding the current 7.7? Like we have to start to put this on the table, and social justice, I think, had to be something that all these like institutions, and I'm like continuously speaking with the Catalan government, Spanish government, and saying it's not just about ethics on animals, it's about ethics on humans. We are not being ethical. This is not a democratic system. We have a system that just gives food to certain people and then like delivers zero food to other certain people that we seem to not care. So I think this is a very important point that we have to start to talk more, because if not, like in 2050 will be almost impossible to solve if we are not starting to like make the steps to that.
I'm really happy that you brought this up, and I I wanted to dive into this just a little bit more. You know, and as context, so as I'm sure many of you know, the World Food Program won the Nobel Peace Prize last year for its work in fighting food insecurity. I mean, and there are a staggering 250 million people on this planet living in a state of food insecurity, and 10% of those people are here in the United States. Which I think is a shockingly tragic number for an industrialized country like ours. And I think, as you said, we're not serving our population well. And I wonder, for access, besides cost, right? Obviously, we need to produce a product that costs less than conventional meat and seafood. But what else do we need to do to get products to people? And I'm not talking about, you know, the next 3 or 4 years when our products are very expensive, but in the long arc, when cultured meat and plant-based meats are present in sort of large volumes.
I think that you need to be there. We need to develop a new supply chain for food production, more distributed. Production cannot be concentrated in some countries, in another nothing. There will be more production close to the people. This will reduce the gas emission, but at the same time, will facilitate the access to the food. Then if we generate, you know, protein production areas close to cities, you can feed the city population from this specific area. It could be plant-based, cell-based, whatever combination of that, but we need to reduce the logistics. It cannot be possible that we are producing soybean in Argentina, sending to China, growing pork and sending back the pork to Europe in some way or some format. It's crazy. Then this concept of globalization is a nonsense for the future. You need to develop distributed system. I have some German customer that is thinking to produce soybean in Germany to generate its own plant-based soybean products locally. Then this will generate also additional workforce. It can help you to have a job opportunity for people with not university degrees, because you need people to work the farm. Then you have the full spectrum of education and an opportunity for everyone. That this is a very important thing. As soon as we feed people and we educate people, they will take care of the planet better than us. Right now, the inequalities are producing the big problem. All the developing countries, there are people with low access to food, low education. They are having 10 kids by family, and this is why they are growing so fast without good access to education. And it's very difficult. You can see the COVID situation. In the developing countries, the COVID situation is worse than in any other places because people don't follow the rules. Then how can you talk about climate impact in this population? Because they're not taking care even for COVID, where there is a health problem. Then we need to educate people, and food is a way to start it, because its kids are fed with good food, essential fatty acid, and everything. The brain grows well, and then they can study, they can concentrate at school, and they can become more and more competent and more educated. And we need to facilitate this process by thinking in distributed way. And we are creating process that can be distributed and licensed in a way that we can produce at the same time in Europe, US, Asia, or in any country.
Andres, maybe we'll make this just in the interest of time. Maybe the last question for the panel. I wanted to pick up a little bit on what you said with respect to supply chains to a certain extent, right? You mentioned how absurd it is, the distance that something has to travel before it gets to the consumer's plate, right? And I'm interested to know what opportunities this technology gives us to create a more sensible supply chain. Obviously one that has a lower carbon footprint, but one hopefully that is a little bit more transparent. So maybe Michael or Martin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts are, I think Andres mentioned it already, that he's developing a system that can be, distributed globally and used on a more local level. That's exactly what we're envisioning as well. That would translate into that you can produce cultured meat, in the middle of the desert or in remote villages or, anywhere. It's possible, we envision, at a scale that's not huge. So for smaller towns to have a production system there, it seems feasible. And that's exactly how I think you can transform the food system, because you will be able to meet the demand globally. That's the points that have been raised already. I think there's also an opportunity, something that strikes me as being absurd as well, going back to the point that was raised about not serving or the food insecurity topic, is that supermarkets throw away insane amounts of food. And with plant-based or cell-cultured meat products, there's an opportunity to increase shelf life, to tailor the supply and demand better towards each other. And I think that whole view of improving the system is possible with this technology, and that will check all the boxes that we've described. And we need to think about it on that scale. So on a local, smaller scale, I also think for the largely populated countries or areas, we can think about big factories, of course, but this technology, both plant-based and cell-cultured, they offer this opportunity to do.
Yeah, I think little to add. I mean, the decentralization, localization of food production obviously applies for cultured food and for plant-based going forward. And Martin, thanks for tackling the topic of food waste. It's $2 trillion every year which goes into the bin. I mean, how mad has mankind developed in order to do that? It's actually a topic we're addressing with our investments. We have started to look into that very seriously. Obviously, there's lots of different topics along the value chain where food gets spoiled. It's not only the supermarket, it's production and logistics, and I mean, it's lots of different stuff. And it's a fascinating topic. And when we talk about impact, it's the number 4 ranking in all, you have China, US, and you have animal agriculture, and the fourth is actually food waste. I mean, all you do to produce $2 trillion every year in food to throw it away. I mean, Jesus Christ. So yeah, so with decentralized production, that's obviously a big would be a big improvement. Yeah, not only in bringing and delivering food to certain parts of the population which today are excluded. Thanks, Bernardo, for bringing that up. I mean, it's a very good topic, but as well for reducing food waste and spoilage. I think it's will definitely go that way. The awareness, I think the one thing about COVID and the pandemic, I mean, all these topics, they have come up to the surface so big time. Yes, we are biased because we talk to each other and we are already convinced, and so we kind of don't need to be educated ourselves any longer. But even in the, let's say, more general public, the topic of sustainability and of the system errors we have when we talk food or other supply chains, that has become very aware, and consumers are willing to take a step back. That's what we think, what we feel, what we sense, and even when you talk to colleagues or to other people, that has come up. So there's hope that will accelerate the change. That's what we can observe.
And maybe Bernardo, I'll give you the last word.
Wow.
Yeah. So, what does a menu look like in 5 years? Somebody goes into a restaurant.
The one I want, or the one I think that will be? The one I want for sure.
Let's be
will not have any
aspirational.
animal. Aspirational, like, I think like change is gonna like accelerate a lot. Like, and I think COVID, as you all mentioned, is accelerating this, and people are connecting more the dots in animals, planet, and our health. Like, and we all are interconnected. So hopefully in 5 years, like, at least there are options in every menu. I think options gives freedom, and we have to deliver options, and options that are great. And here we have the responsibility, either culture or plant-based, to deliver great options. But in every restaurant and every fridge in the world, they have to have the chance to decide they want to have a great, like, positive impact in the world. And I think this is the most important. And if in 5 years we got this, we deliver options everywhere, and so people have the freedom in a democratic, accessible way to choose those, I think this will be a success for all of us. And then in 10 years, animals for sure out of the equation, hopefully.
Wonderful. Thanks for that upbeat. And I'd like to thank you all for participating. And I look forward to meeting you all in person, hopefully sometime this year.
Yes, hopefully.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
everyone.
much. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Have a lovely day.
Everyone.